Well, good morning and welcome to this Thursday Thought. As I was driving into work, I happened to think of what it might be like to have my mom and dad in the pickup with me, shadowing me as I did my daily routine of work today. My parents were born in the 19 teens and they were young adults during the Great Depression. They married at the end of the 1930s decade and they both passed away in the 1980s. They lived in small towns pretty much all their lives and raised their family in a small town in Kansas. They both worked hard all their working lives and often, I think, were just a hop and a skip away from not having enough to feed their growing family. Although we never knew that, and probably until later on in life when we siblings would reminisce about some of the things that happened from time to time while we were growing up, and we sort of figured that out. They were also trusting people. They left their keys in their vehicles. They didn't lock the house up when they went somewhere. They left garage doors open, things out in the yard, and generally weren't that cognizant of nefarious things that might happen. And pretty much nothing did happen. I first have to wonder what they would think of the home we live in. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and more room in just the main floor than the entire house where the 6 of us were raised. And the lower level of our house adds another amount of square footage that exceeds the entire house where we lived as kids. Our home backs up to a park with deep woods, a creek, and paths for people, bicycles, and horses. This kind of thing would have been unthinkable in their day, except for the most financially favored of that day, and would have been grossly extravagant spending, in their opinion. As I drove into town to work, I wondered what they would have thought about the roundabouts. You know, those things at intersections which are supposed to result in better traffic flow. I wondered how Dad would have navigated the traffic had he been driving. And I thought about all the businesses that I passed on my way to work and wondered what they would have thought about all the shops, the small businesses, the apartment complexes, and the big box stores. Well, I don't know what they would have thought about the homeless that I saw on my way into work. Products of the Great Depression, my folks were people who raised their own food. They sewed their own clothes. They they remodeled and expanded their own house. I wonder if they could even comprehend the idea of someone not being able to feed and clothe and house himself and live on the street or under a bridge. The Paxton's Blessing box on the outside of our building. What would they have thought about our putting food in the box for just anyone to take? How would they react if they sat in on one of my interviews with someone who couldn't pay their electric or water bill and needed help? What would they say about the fact that we have security check out our church property each night multiple times during the night, and sometimes have to maybe tell a person loitering on the property that they need to leave or they find some other issue? How would they react to our building being locked down even when we're here and inside? And what would they say knowing that the government is interested in how we maintain our fire sprinkler system, our emergency lighting, and our chairlift that's on our basement stairs at the church? Well, you see that I've not mentioned cellular communications, the internet, or any of that kind of thing. I've stayed with some of the more, shall we say, basic things in the modern world. The gee whiz stuff such as flat screen television and worldwide instant communication, artificial intelligence, video streaming, 300 channel cable TV, self-driving cars and the like. Those things would be just as foreign to them as galactic space travel might be to us. But my parents aren't here. They're not with me today as I go about my daily tasks at the building, and it's probably just as well that they aren't. They would be hard-pressed to fit in and understand the changes that have taken place. It was beginning to be like that back in the 1980s as they went into their final years. They were beginning to have some difficulty in understanding some of those changes. And it would be all the more difficult now to have any kind of understanding of what society is like this day compared with the 1980s. And as you know, it's going to be the same for us. We too If we were suddenly transported into a society 40 or 50 years down the road, we would have a difficult time comprehending, understanding, and getting along. We might well feel just as lost as my parents might should they suddenly experience today's society. Change is constant. While we're part of it, it's easier to cope with it, and often we embrace it. When we've been away from it for a while, it's more difficult to catch up, and sometimes we never get caught up. As we age, it often becomes less important to us to try to keep up. I'm finding myself kind of in this sort of a middle ground with this kind of thing. In some ways, I like to keep current yet, but in other ways, I'm satisfied to just let it go. I'm guessing it's much the same with you. If you're approaching or are past about 70 years old, that's just the way life often is. Well, thanks for listening this week, and may God bless.